Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome for this fourth panel discussion of the week. It's a bright Sunday afternoon here in Geneva, and we are very happy to welcome you at the Watches and Wonders Salon. What are we talking about today? This is a much anticipated topic. This is innovation. What does that mean concretely? Are new materials and technologies creating an interest driver for tomorrow's clients? Well, to answer these questions, we will go and meet my guests of the day right now. Good afternoon to everybody today. I know it's a Sunday afternoon, and for some of you, it's even a Sunday morning, very early morning. So we are very happy to have you all with us today for this panel discussion. And I would like to introduce right now my first guest of the day. This is Antoine, head of Watches Division at Bulgari, and at the helm of Bulgari Watchmaking since the end of 2019, bringing your positivity, passion, motivation to the brand that likes to practice the unexpected. Good afternoon, Antoine.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you for welcoming me and my colleagues around this panel.
Thank you for being with us. Our next guest is CEO Ressence, Benoit Mintiens, Belgian industrial designer who founded Ressence in 2011, an independent watchmaker, and reinvented the way we tell time. Good afternoon, Benoit Mintiens.
Hello, madam. Thank you for inviting me.
We're very happy to have you with us. You're calling us from Belgium, right?
Correct, madam. This is where I was born. So.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for being with us. Our next guest is a collector and the founder of Massena Lab. Massena Lab designs and develops timepieces with renowned watchmakers. And William Massena, our guest, is a well-known collector in the industry. Welcome.
Good morning, Mélanie. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you very much for being with us at such an early hour for you, because you're calling from New York, right?
That's correct. Very foggy, nightly New York.
Okay, so we're sending sun to you because it's really a bright day here in Geneva.
I'll take it.
Okay, good. Our next guest is a collector. His name is Tacq, and he has a very wide approach of the market, and we are very happy to welcome you here today.
Bonjour, Mélanie. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. You're calling from Belgium as well, I think.
As well as, and from the same town as Benoit.
Brussels or Antwerp?
Antwerp.
Antwerp. Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for being with us. And our last guest today is the founder and editor of ABlogtoWatch. His name is Ariel Adams, and your blog is the most referenced watch media platform in the world, and your work has been influencing consumers and industry professionals since 2007. Good afternoon, Ariel Adams.
Mélanie, thank you so much for that great introduction. I really appreciate that. I'm really excited to talk about innovation today.
Great, thank you for being with us. And you're calling from New York as well, so I know it's really early for you, so thank you for
I'm in Los Angeles, actually.
Oh, Los Angeles, all right. So what time is it right now?
Normal working hours for me, don't worry.
Okay, all good, thank you. Perfect. So one more information to give you before we're starting. You know it, you can send us comments, you can send us questions, you can just use the Q&A button on your screen, and we will receive all your questions and comments. We will deal with them, and who's going to do that? This is always my two favorite men on the set, I have to admit, Pascal Ravsou and Benjamin Teisseire. Thank you for being with us as well.
Sure.
You ready to deal with all these questions and comments?
Ready, yes, we are.
I'm not worried at all. It's perfect. And so we will do a Q&A session at the end of this panel discussion. So be sure to send us your questions and your comments. So we are ready now to start with this panel discussion and our guests. And I would like maybe to start with a general question. And I would like to go into an historical overview of innovation in watchmaking. And this first question would be for you, Tacq. Can you give us this general overview?
Well, I mean, I'm not an historian. I'm a collector, but I'm not necessarily a historian. But I think the most important fact that we need to bear in mind is that horology today is much more about passion and sentiment than the functionality. If we all agree on the fact that if we want to have the most precise time, there are today definitely other means than the mechanical watches. But if we go back to the time of Adam Louis Breguet, and we just think for 1 second about one complication, which is the répétition minute, and you imagine that you would wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning on a chilly November night, and you wanted to find out what time it was, and you all of a sudden remember what the répétition minute does, you would be able to find out what time it was without having to find a way to light your candle. And if we then go back to today, we can understand that people say, what is the purpose of the répétition minute? Well, for one, as I said, it is a very emotional tool today. And that brings actually, in my mind, the heart of this question of innovation. Adam Louis Breguet, of course, is the man that stands for the most innovations that were brought into the watch industry at the time. Today, we look at innovation. In my mind, innovation is not only key to the industry, but it's the way of survival of this industry. Benoit will certainly be able to explain, if need be, what he's been doing, respecting the basic, which is the mechanical watchmaking, but trying to bring it into the 21st century. And Antoine will be able to give you also the view of what technology can do in terms of the materials that we use, and they have done some splendid work in the last couple of years in that respect. So I think, on the one hand, we all agree, I hope, that in terms of timekeeping and time and taking note of time, we are not the most modern industry, of course, in that aspect. But on the other hand, we are key to emotion. We are key to a history. And if I may conclude, I think that innovation is also going to be the key to keep the next generation involved into mechanical watchmaking.
Well, thank you for this first point of situation. I would like to go to you, William Massena, and see if you share this general point of view.
I do. I agree with Patrick. There's one thing that we shouldn't forget. There's a tradition of innovation in Swiss making, as Patrick mentioned, with the MIDI repeater as an example. And I think we keep that tradition of innovation today. There's still something to be done. There was for a very long time a quest for better timekeeping, a quest to have better legibility. Maybe those quests have been more or less achieved today, and we're trying to do other innovations. But the tradition still exists and is hopefully very alive in watchmaking.
So this is really finding a balance between tradition and innovation, including the emotion in the middle of that. And this time, I will turn to you, Antoine Pin, and take a look at what you're thinking.
But I guess we'll all share the same values. You know, we are talking about it's a sector that as my predecessor is probably not totally related to functionality, but conversely, that has been always driven by innovation, by people who wanted to push their own capacity in finding either solution or improving the performances of the tools that they were providing. And even if today we are not properly competing with some of the precise technologies, there is still this is living within you. And clearly it's about moving on, proposing, surprising our clients, coming with new solutions within a scope which remains let's say the playing field of traditional watchmaking. So and so it's not about let's say moving astrological or as let's say so technologies that are nuclear technologies that probably we would not even afford to go into, because we should remember that we are a small industry, but it's trying to challenge ourselves, probably again push our creativity. But let's be clear, the way we manage to bring people in our industry, young people, not only customers, but even young engineers, young watchmakers, it's about to bring, let's say, innovative questions and challenges to those people. So if we basically try to just respect our heritage, we will lose everyone.
Respecting the heritage, that's a very interesting point, and that's why I'm going to turn to you, Benoit Mintiens. Yes. What do you think when you hear that, respecting your heritage, when we know that you actually started in 2011 with Ressence?
Yes, started in 2010. And the focus we have is very different, actually, than compared to, well, I would say the general tendency in fine watchmaking is indeed about craftsmanship and these innovations, where we see innovation more as a combination of past, like the traditional fine watchmaking, and what innovation and technology can bring today. Because in the end, why do we innovate? We innovate to adapt. We innovate to adapt to the customer, to a new situation. There is a new ecosystem that we live in today than 200 years ago. And so the consumer, the person that wears a watch today is not the same as even in the quartz crisis. It's another person. We live in another environment with other technologies surrounding us. And so to us, a watch is still a functional thing, even though, yes, indeed, the industry has shifted a bit. But we, as a young brand, we believe, but okay, that's our positioning here, that functionality is still the core of. If a watch is not functional, what's its relevance? A product that is not functional is, to my understanding, less relevant. So we believe that adding functionality is key. And yes, precision, we don't live at microsecond precision as human beings. We maybe 1 minute or maybe 5, that's it. So how precise should a watch be? So watches are more than precise enough. But there are other aspects that we can improve a lot. And that's where new technologies, new ideas, new concepts come in that we try to translate to come up with something that is, we call it 21st century fine watchmaking, but okay, that's every brand has its own positioning.
Benoit Mintiens, you were talking about new aspects that you can improve. Which one are they?
Well, the basis of the improvements that we bring are always related to the user, the person that wears the watch. So if you improve, for example, we talked about legibility, for example. Well, there's a lot to do about legibility. You can make the watch more clear to read. We have conducted studies with Harvard neuroscience department to see how the brain understands an image projected by a watch and how does the brain translate that into a time dimension where you are in the dimension of time. So how do you project the image that is projected by a watch, the time information? How do you do that the most efficient way? We found out that it's possible, and we will come later on in a few years. We'll come with a new concept that is 50% more efficient than the watch that you have today in reading time, meaning you need less time to see the same information. You can, I can go on for hours like this, so I think
that's already very interesting, and that's amazing to see all the things you can work on, all the initiatives, and where we're going to be in like 20 years. Well, we'll talk again, I hope, then with Ressence, and you'll tell us if what you were saying came true. I would like now to go to you, Ariel Adams, and have your reactions on the things you've heard at the beginning of this panel discussion.
I'm actually really happy I went last here because so much of what my colleagues said validate and back up what I think I'm about to say. I think Benoit made it very clear that innovation is all around us right now. I think that sometimes people in the industry tire of the discussion of innovation because they keep saying, well, we're innovating all the time. The problem is that when you come out with an innovation, you assume that there's a market for this innovation. I think so. What the collectors sort of in this panel said is that they're not really seeing new innovations that seem to be relevant. And so the industry has to go back and ask themselves, how do you create demand for these innovations? And here is how I think it ties back to heritage. A lot of brands today like to make sort of retro watches and vintage renewed models and things like that. It seems as though they're sort of going through back catalogs and just looking at pictures. Maybe they should investigate how those watches were marketed, why they were made in the first place, and investigate how the market demands innovation. I think that's really the key, is what innovations does the market demand? Because otherwise you have to educate the industry or educate the market on why it should want it. And that can take a number of years. And we know in the industry right now, they're looking for some quick solutions. They want products that will sell in the market. So I think sort of the marketing realities and innovation need to be tied together a little bit more, and some long-term outlooks need to be made, as well as sort of a better examination of how innovations were marketed in the past.
So it's really a customer centricity, and the main point that I would take from what you just said is it needs to be relevant. And then I will turn myself to you, Antoine, and see on what initiative you're currently working on.
Well, we're clear. We've identified an area that is somewhat very relevant to us, probably, which is. We're concentrating on our research and our learning experience ourselves on miniaturization of calibers. Well, basically because as a jeweler, as a designer, we need to provide efficient tools, efficient timekeepers within limited volume. And we made this for clearly because we have the capacity to address all the aspects of watchmaking throughout all, let's say, all the areas of watchmaking. So we decided to use this field in order to push our knowledge further and further. Now, what is very interesting is when you let's say, try to fine-tune, you wrangle the way you address the question of watchmaking, be it from a miniaturization perspective, from a precision perspective, from a power reserve perspective, and probably this is one field that could be extremely meaningful to customers in the future. Because let's say, if we talk about sustainability, we can arguably say that our items are extremely sustainable. And if we've managed to address the question of power reserve of mechanical watches, there is basically very little that quartz watches can bring compared to what we can bring. So whatever the way you address the question of watchmaking, whichever angle you take, when you dig further and further, you necessarily have to deal with the other watchmaking. So what I mean by that is, through miniaturization, we eventually come to questioning the question of energy transmission, the question of precision, and we are therefore meeting each other with other brands that are, let's say, improving in their knowledge and their developments at some point. So for us, miniaturization eventually will lead us to address other questions, and particularly the one that is today extremely meaningful to me is that of the capacity to improve the power reserve of mechanical watches. Because this one, to get back to what Adams was saying, is extremely meaningful to customers and probably even more to the young generation.
We've known that at Bulgari, you multi-awarded with, for example, the Octo Finissimo range of watches. Does that mean for you that the customers want that? And does that mean that you will go further in this direction?
I think it's there are plenty of elements in those world records. It's very nice to have a world record. And let's be clear, we're very proud of the fact that we managed to propose thinner watches. It's a kind of award to our teams because they've managed to enter new territories. So, and clearly customers, let's say, it's a way to talk to customers. It's positive. So now, what's behind the code is much more important. It's our capacity to systematically improve ourselves. Every time we reduce the dimension of the calibers, we have to deal with additional challenges. Challenges in terms of precision of tooling, precision of mounting, of construction, and and every time we achieve we manage to deal with one of those challenges, our level of expertise improves. So innovation is a way for us to improve our capacities across the board in watchmaking, and probably beyond the world records. That's what customers understand. They understand that with world records there is a certain expertise in watchmaking, and I hope that they don't just stick to the world record. Now, as I previously said, the fact that we mention those world records is today really a way to attract talents in our company, and also to build some kind of ecosystem. There are many people working around the field of miniaturization in the watch industry. We are not the lonely player by far, but we build a community of experts who eventually push themselves. And again, I mean, there are players in this field who are leading in some very specific leads of fields of R&D, and that are opening new doors, and probably opening doors to true changes of watchmaking, significant changes in terms of performances, particularly.
Well, I would like to now have the point of view of the collectors, because as collectors, you are also consumers. So is it for you, according to you, a Sigis driver? I'm going to ask the question to William Massena.
It is. To go back to what Antoine was saying, you have world records, you have new innovations, and this trickle down to an improved product that comes to the customer and is more appreciated by the customer. And to echo what Adam said, there's definitely a need to use all those technology and bring to a customer that needs that technology or wants that technology in this new product. The major issue here for watchmakers is find what your client wants. And I think Adam is absolutely right there. You need to do that, but in certain way, you need to give them an offering of what's possible for them to choose. And this is where the watchmaker, through new innovations, world records, competition, might be able to achieve for that customer to realize what he needs. It's a bit, let's say a good circle where the customer knows what he wants based on the work of the competition among watchmakers on certain aspects of technology, whether it's eligibility, whether it's thinner watches, whether it's lighter watches. The customer needs to see that something is happening and that they can find maybe a place for them to buy a watch that they're looking at.
Patrick Tacq, as a collector, what do you want as a customer?
That's a very good question, and I think already we need to make a distinction between a collector, which we assume has a certain prerequisite knowledge of the industry, of the watchmaking history, and has refined the areas that he or she is really attracted to. And coming back to what Ariel said before, what is important is, as manufacturers, to define your markets. And there's one thing that we all have here is, of course, because we are somehow connected or every day in this industry, is that we should not forget that we need to connect with customers and not first launch products and then try to find how means to attract customers. First of all, we need to see who potential customers are, and then see whether that is a market that we can tap into based on the history that we have. I'm talking now, let's say, from the point of view of a maison or a watch manufacturer. What I find very interesting, and I hope we'll touch on it further, is also the many independent watchmakers we have today, and that are thriving. And that all certainly are recognized because of their innovative approach to the market, be it Max and his friends, or be it Moser, who are more traditional in their approach, or be it Greubel and Forcet. I mean, there's so many independent watchmakers out there that all thrive only on innovation, and actually make of the aspect of innovation their trademark. I forgot to mention Richard Mille, who of course has a tremendous success based especially on his innovative research on the materials he's been using more than on the purely horological point of view. So I think we have many points there. I think we as a collector are only a small part of the market. We are probably more in touch with the brands that I just mentioned because they are niche. But we need to think at brands that cater for the larger audience. Looking at the Swatch Group, or looking at Rolex, or looking at these kind of brands. For them, innovation is key, but also we need to think about manufacturing. One thing that I like to do a lot is to draw similarities between the automobile industry and the watchmaking industry. Both are, and coming back to my initial point, both are, a lot of it is emotion and a lot of it is mechanics. When we look at cars, and I'm not the first one to say that in the context of Watch and Wonders this year, cars are being general. There's a how they call it, a facelift every 2 or 3 years of an existing model. And there seems to be this sort of frenzy in the watchmaking industry to have to come out with new products almost every time there's a new salon. And I think that's a point which sometimes will drive manufacturers to despair, because how many innovations can you bring out on such short notice? And especially as Benoit pointed out, when you're looking at it from an innovative point of view, you're going to spend a tremendous amount of time researching things and testing things before you can actually bring them to the market. And that's another interesting point, because that brings us to the point of price. Why is it so often the case that innovative watches are so expensive? People say, we laud you for bringing them, but why do they need to cost 45,000 Swiss francs? Couldn't they cost 15,000? Well, go back to the time spent innovating and researching and coming up with a product that's durable, etc., etc. So a lot of aspects there. And as I said before, collection, we are collectors, but we are only a small part of this market, and I think we need to look also at the broader picture.
I would like to go to Benoit Mintiens, because talking about the price, I know that there has been a big reflection with innovation and price at Ressence, right?
Well, we have quite straightforward. So I know that larger corporations will do market researches and define, okay, we need this segment or this target group, or we need to have a product in that specific niche. We as independent brands, we are creating watches. We are not selling or producers. We are more creators than trade people, and so we don't do a lot of market research before we decide to put Internet of Things in a mechanical watch. Of course, we know that there is a sensitivity in the market. As a Belgian, I'm not concerned about the sensitivity that some have. So we really think that mixing these innovations from different fields, they have to, yes, touch a certain customer, yes, for sure. But the nice thing about watchmaking is that we all have different customers, and that is so nice in the watch business. What we do, the clients we have at Ressence are probably not the ones that others will have, and the opposite. So we all, if you have a relevant approach towards fine watchmaking and a different approach towards fine watchmaking, I think that well, you will touch your customers if you do it in a good way, and well, that's a little bit what we believe in as a young brand, is to really follow our path, have our own mission, follow that, and be coherent in the process. Yes.
But Benoit Mintiens, isn't it a bit easier as an independent watchmaker to do that as compared to a big brand?
Well, we have the luxury that price is less an issue for us. If you compare, let's say, just one part of a Ressence watch, probably costs the same as the whole watch for a big corporation. So we have, for sure, we have the very small quantities. We have the very high innovation development costs. Because we do things that nobody does, so you really have to invent the wheel, basically, for every product we do. So we have a double negative effect, and so yes, in the end, the cost is higher to produce it. We produce in Switzerland, not the cheapest country in the world to produce things.
Nope.
So there is all these elements that stack up, and then in the end, yeah, you come with a very high cost. Okay, that's the price to pay to really come with real innovation. If you just change the color, yes, some people call it an innovation. We don't consider it as an innovation.
Okay, thank you very much. I would like to go back to you, Ariel Adams, and talk about the dream dimension of the products, because this is such an important aspect. We were talking about emotions. Is that an innovation driver?
I'm so happy you said the word dream, because I was just thinking of that when listening to Benoit and thinking about Ressence. I want to first say that I really believe that it is the companies that need to drive innovation, not the consumer. Consumers follow brands. Brands should be the innovators. So I think if you look too much to the market to ask what does the market want, you need to ask, you have to imagine what is it the market needs. And I think a lot of the expensive innovation really needs to come from the big brands. Brands like Ressence are the dreamers. These are companies that will always exist on the fringe that ask the big question, what if? But they're never going to have the economy of scale of a Swatch Group when it comes to sort of just like routine innovation. One of my favorite examples of this innovation is anti-magnetism. And it's funny because not a lot of consumers even know this is a problem or recognize these products in the market. And over the last several years, we've seen anti-magnetism from pretty much all the major groups, and Richemont especially has been pushing it in some very affordable models. But the problem is the consumers don't yet know that they need it. So now the industry has to do something that never had to do in the past, which is educate the consumer, tell them the story. This is why magnetism is a problem for mechanical movements. This is what we've done about it, and this is why our product is one of the best value, whatever, in anti-magnetism. So they have to create more of a conversation about these problems and then explain the solutions that they're offering.
Antoine, I saw you nodding.
Yeah, no, I mean it's right that I mean the further we go, with technology and Ariel is mentioning anti-magnetism. We're talking now about let's say, for instance, identification process of watches against counterfeiting, and such as blockchain. Those are amazing concepts, but you have to make sure you take the customers with you. And I agree that we as an industry, we have to continue to educate customers and also develop also even let's say the number of collectors, and because they are the ones that are nourishing those free thinkers such as Benoit. So there is let's say we have a mission as groups and let's say leaders of the industry to continue to communicate, to explain anti-magnetism, to explain how one day the blockchain certificate can be a certificate of ownership. But this can only work if all consumers know about it. Otherwise, a transaction will never take place properly, because the transaction with those kinds of certificates can only work if all consumers know about them. So we have to create this somewhat seduction and then education, and then developing new generations of collectors in order to make this whole ecosystem of traditional watchmaking continue to grow, to develop, and be so creative as it is right now. I mean, again, Benoit or Max or Edouard Mélan from Moser would not necessarily survive if we didn't have so many passionate people who are ready to spend quite a lot of money on those beautiful artifacts. So, and we need those collectors, and we need more of them.
Benoit Mintiens, you want to react?
Yes, I wanted to add on this that we as independent brands are a little bit further away in the food chain of fine watchmaking, whereas the larger corporations, they create the dream as or the magics, a little bit what Ariel was mentioning. Ressence is probably, or an MBNF or Moser, are not your first watch, probably. But if the larger corporations with more mainstream products don't develop the will, the demand, the attraction towards fine watchmaking or to watchmaking generally, and then fine watchmaking and eventually independent fine watchmaking, there is a whole development there. And sometimes I hear people complaining about the Apple Watch. I'm super happy that there is an Apple Watch. You know why? Because my children, they don't wear a mechanical watch, they wear an Apple Watch. But and maybe one day they will wear a mechanical watch, and then maybe one day they will wear an independent watch. But if they don't wear this Apple Watch today, they will never get used to have something on their wrist that gives them this feeling. And so we are all in an ecosystem of how do we make sure that people continue to have the reflex of checking the time on their wrist. This is what it's all about. We need to all do that all together. We have to create good products so that all the people in the world check their wrist when they want to know the time. That's the main thing, and we do it at different levels. And but the broader, the better, huh?
Right. So you're working actually hands in hands. I saw you reacting, William Massena. So I would like to get your point of view.
I agree with the panel. I think there's one thing, a point I want to make. We're talking collectors, but most people buy 1 or 2 watches in their lifetime. Right. And in order to reach those people, I see collectors more as early adopters, where you'll go to a niche and you like Benoit or you like Bulgari, and you're a collector of those, and you will appreciate the product better, and you will understand the technology better. But then this has to trickle down to the brands, to the big brands, to the Swatch Group, who may sell 1 or 2 watches to somebody during their lifetime. And these are the people that should also benefit from those innovations that we don't really talk about. At the end of the day, I think collectors is already an accepted audience that is willing to give the money. They're like, please, take my money, please. I want that watch. I want that watch with, like Benoit is making, Ressence. They're already, the audience is already there. They're there to test the products in certain ways. But to trickle it down to a wider audience is, I think, the challenge for brands now, going forward.
So your point is actually innovation should be for everybody. Do you share this same point of view, Ariel Adams?
Absolutely. I think that William has, of course, been a collector, and a term I like to use now that's a little bit better, I think, is hobbyist. And hobbyist is someone that sort of enjoys the category, likes watches for various reasons, wants multiple watches, and they are the most demanding customer. If you can make them happy, there's a good chance that you can make the mainstream happy. There's very few watches out there that have been very, very popular that hobbyists have outright rejected. So I think it's very important to encourage a thriving hobbyist community, especially as Antoine said, the industry has to invest in creating new hobbyists all the time, because hobbyists are like the influencers of the watch industry. They get excited about watches, and we've done research that has identified that people who identify as sort of a hobbyist, 85% of them say that everyone in their life knows that they like watches because they keep talking about it. These are the people they're going to tell their friends and their families and their coworkers what watches to buy. And so this trickle-down notion of educating this niche category that has a very loud volume and speaks to the whole world is a very, very powerful concept. And I want brands to always think about the strategy of creating these exciting things, telling hobbyists about it, and then hoping that they will amplify that to the mainstream, because what everyone's looking for is the sales volumes that come from mainstream consumption, not just enthusiasts.
So my next question would be a question for the brands, but do you think it's possible to work together and sharing your innovations? Is that something that is possible in this field? I can ask the question to Antoine Pin, yes.
Well, I think, I mean, this is exactly what it's all about. I mean, I've had the chance to experience some moments with the people from the Tacq, and I was amazed by the fact that this notion of open source, and open source is largely goes largely beyond some IT systems that are proposed. It's actually about innovators, entrepreneurs who are not scared of sharing because they get more from the global sharing than what they give away. Why? Because they're confident enough. They know that they're already working on the next product. Conversely, they're getting access to areas that they're not experts in, and they're gaining so much time. I think this is exactly the point. We should remember, we're a small industry. It's getting very, very complex to move forward. There is a lot to share. There are anyway lots of patents that are open to many actors. And we have a lot to gain from this open sharing, because it gives more field for creativity of independent, but also of major brands. I mean, again, I don't think this is just a specific for new entrepreneurs. Even the Swatch Group, even Richemont, they need sometimes to, let's say, to be smart in the way they invest in their R&D field. So open, yes, absolutely. Shared, let's say, shared knowledge and shared experience is something that, to me, is a huge benefit. We are confident enough in our capacity to be ourselves, not to be scared of sharing what we know.
Benoit, Mintiens, a short reaction. We have only a few minutes left.
Yes, well, I think that developing new technologies, and if you can do it together between different brands, is super strong, not only because the cost of the development is lower, but also that if more brands come up with a certain new technology, I will call it, well, it will be accepted more easily in the market. So there are only advantages to do it, to work together, and maybe that's something that is not done enough. But okay, we fortunately have the experience that we do this with other brands, and it's super efficient to do it. And I would say, yes, if there is really a revolution somewhere, let's do it all together, and everybody will get better out of it.
I saw Ariel Adams wanted to react, so a quick reaction, please.
Really quick. So remember, I started my business when I was living in San Francisco in Silicon Valley. I was in the heart of sort of the open source debate versus the closed code. Here's what ends up happening. Here's sort of I'll get to the point. The big brands are always going to have the power because the machinery to make a lot of things is very, very expensive. To really have the sharing, you need to have an industrial complex big enough to be able to make parts and share technology at a cost which is cheap enough for the little guy. It's actually not very difficult to hide, to understand how a lot of the movements work, but the ability to actually make them and get the parts is crucial. So parts availability and technology availability, that's, I think, the question that everyone needs to answer.
Thank you very much, Ariel. And a last question to you, maybe Patrick Tacq. Do you see this possible in the future?
Of course, I see it possible. I think we need to go in that route. And I applaud and I laud everybody here on the panel to think in the same way, especially also Antoine and Benoit. We need to share, and we all have a role to play in this. Be it also the small collectors that we are. As Antoine said, there is a responsibility for the brand, but we as fortunate collectors, we should be the ambassadors of the industry. We should, as Ariel said, talk about it as much as we can and have the trickle-down effect. And coming back to Benoit and to Ariel on that point, yes, if we talk and we share new technologies, we share innovation, yes, it will be accepted. Yes, there will be a huge demand because there will be a larger common knowledge and acceptance for it, and we can only thrive from it.
Well, so I would say the future is bright on the innovation field, but right now I would like to see what are the questions that our audience sent, and for this I will call Pascal Ravsou to join me on the set. Thank you, gentlemen, for sharing your points of view. We'll go now to the Q&A. So what were the main topics that made our audience reacting?
Well, first of all, I would like to point out that it's the third time out of 4 panels that we think about collaboration, collaborative ideas, and I'm very happy with that. First kind of comments we have is about true innovations. A lot of people react about whether the innovation that are presented are really true innovations. Maybe a rant as well, and I'm quoting. There's someone that said that was not really happy, saying, honestly, innovation is a buzzword today, and there has been not many true innovation in watchmaking lately. Let's be clear, a new dial color is not innovation.
It's not innovation, right? I think, Benoit Mintiens, you share this point of view, right?
Quite well, yes.
He's not alone.
Yes, but I think, if I may say, it's unfair to the people who truly innovate, because I think there are plenty of brands, and we were talking about well, let's say the likes of Benoit, but we see very creative products, probably that do not get as much share of voice because they're not necessarily the biggest brands, but there is a lot of money spent on innovation. Now, again, it all depends on the definition of innovation. If it's about a new way of measuring time, this is not happening easily, and clearly it requires lots of energies and time. But there are true innovation that, for instance, were unveiled during this week. We should not just stick to the new dial color. I agree.
Ariel Adams, I saw you wanting to react.
I'm always excited to talk about this.
We're happy to listen to you.
Antoine, as Antoine pointed out, it's important to ask yourself, what is the definition of innovation as we talk about it here? And different people are going to agree on a different definition. This is how I think about it. An innovation is something that allows a watch to do something it's never been able to do before, or allow a watch to go in a place it's never been able to go before. And so there's different contexts in terms of how you answer this. Color, I agree. If you could have already made the dial that color, it's not an innovation. But if you have a material that allows you to make a watch in a color that it was never able to be done before, or a texture, that can be an innovation. It just has to ask yourself, are you actually creating something new? Because if you're not, of course, you should not call it an innovation. It might be fresh, it might be trendy, but it's not an innovation.
So what you're saying is actually innovation sometimes is just for spectacle.
Well, I mean, traditionally, innovation was something that allowed a watch to perform as a better tool. These days, innovation can have a different marketing component. If the people who are buying watches are not, as the panel discussed, buying them to tell the time, why are they buying them? They're clearly wearing them for a reason. If that is to feel better, to be more fashionable, to express something about themselves, to do something in a particular context, all of those needs require innovation. So there's always innovation that's necessary, just the brands need to connect a little bit more with who's wearing and buying the watches to ask those questions. And there's always an opportunity to do a lot more of that.
Benoit Mintiens, you see the watches as somebody's avatar, right?
Yes, because, you know, a watch for a man is like high heels for a woman. You feel
really?
You feel stronger, more sure of yourself as a guy wearing a certain type of watch or a certain brand. It represents you. It's kind of incarnation or a concentrated version of the values you want to carry out by wearing a certain brand or another product. It depends a little bit, but in the end, it gives you a certain better feeling. You feel more reassured wearing your watch than without. You feel a bit naked. So yes, I really believe that a watch is your avatar. That's for sure. Yes.
So let's see, Pascal, if we have some more questions, some more comments.
We have a lot of questions.
Okay, I'll let you go.
First one, maybe more technical. Considering the balance springs date back to 1675, should an innovation focus also on the regulating organ?
Ooh, that's a very technical question, so maybe I should ask it to Antoine Pain.
Yes, absolutely. But there's been but you know, there's been innovation. I mean, you should think that there are plenty of fields that are being addressed. For instance, talking about the regulating organ, I would talk about the microgirder. The microgirder was initiated by Tacq, so I experienced this. Completely different approach. made with a view to actually challenge the natural spring and work with the vibration of materials in a different physical way. So instead of having a rotation effect, it was, there is innovation in this. Now, where do we stand right now? We stand at the limit of the physical nature. Okay, the reason why the industry of the spring was because we were reaching the limits, the physical limits of materials, of the physics of materials. So yes, absolutely, there are fields that have to be addressed, and there is a lot of creativity in trying to addressing them, but innovation doesn't mean success in innovation all the time. So we are testing, we are trying, and again, here it's costing a lot of money because we are failing. And we are still giving ourselves the possibility to fail. Not all our launches are successes. And so we do, and we did. And the microgirder is so complex that it was a complete success, even if some items were launched with this product. But there is a lot of work being done here. But as Ariel was saying, it takes a lot of time to innovate deeply into those techniques because we're reaching very, very complex fields.
Benoit, Mintiens.
Yeah, well, I would not speak about the spring, but for example, what we did with eCrown, the electronic or digital crown for a mechanical watch, is for me a good example of something that exists since 1842, if I'm not wrong. Well, it has never been changed since. Well, by applying Internet of Things, digital technology and electric circuits, you can make this thing so much more intelligent, smarter, practical, functional, and you don't touch the integrity of the mechanical watch. You just leave it as it is. You only touch the part that is called crown functionalities. You can do such a wide variety of additional functionalities to a mechanical watch by just rethinking certain subsystems in the watch. And so, yes, I believe that there is so much room for innovation that we just don't look at. If we would not have done eCrown, there would still be normal crowns today.
Ariel Adams.
I think that the development of the regulation system has gone so far that we've gone to atomic clocks that are so precise we never have to think about it again. When it comes to the luxury watch space, which is this, I think we need to focus on visual innovations. That has really been a limiting factor. If something isn't an innovation that the eyes can perceive, it tends to not be so sexy. We think of something like quartz, which of course is one of the massive innovations on the regulation system. But I think visual innovations are really at heart of what moves the emotions. Going back to what Benoit said about having the avatar on your wrist, that's a visual experience. So I think that watchmakers should always be thinking about what looks appealing, because your heart is the most important decision maker here. Your mind is always going to appreciate there's something out there, like an atomic clock, that has performed this task better. And so I think that sort of the technology race isn't something that right now the luxury watch industry can win. The emotion race is where it's strong.
I think there was somebody nodding, but I didn't really see which one it was. It was William Massena.
I agree. Again, I agree with Ariel. The issue is this. It's very hard for your average consumer to understand about the regulating organ. It's like, what are you talking about? What do I need to know this? It's easier to understand that you're changing some kind of the case color with a new material that is carbon or ceramic or whatever your marketing department told you to name it. I think that's much easier for a consumer to understand than go and explain that the regulating organ has to evolve and you have to pay the price for this. There's a way you need to teach the consumer, and obviously there's a lot, including me, that I love these changes in the microglide. I remember when this came out, Antoine, I was very excited. But I think the difficulty is to have the market adapt it. It's very hard for the market to adopt those and understand it and then trickle it down. Carbon fiber, which was very expensive 20 years ago, is now found in $1,000 watches. And that was something that was $30,000 maybe 20 years ago.
Back to you, Pascal.
Yes, I wanted also to have the point of view of William and Patrick as collectors about these hybrid watches, as Benoit was mentioning, the e-crown kind of electronic regulation from a mechanical watch. How is it accepted as a hardcore collector?
Let's take a look at Patrick Tacq's point of view.
Well, I must say that there are quite a few differences there that I will briefly point out. Going back to the initial question that there was about you know, the regulatory elements of a watch and the escapement and the balance wheel and so on and so forth. Although it's usually mentioned in one breath with the Japanese horology, we have the spring drive, for instance. We've had these things before, and probably like William said or like Ariel said, the difficulty there lies into selling it to your customer. If you want to explain a spring drive to someone who is not very knowledgeable, you're going to spend the better part of half a day at least trying to explain it to him, and it's not even sure he's going to understand it. And you're going to have to spend a few weeks with him showing how it improves the accuracy of the watch before he may even start to understand it. So there is certainly there an element, you know, we almost become anoraks, and you know, we get to these small things that will trigger our minds, but won't trigger probably, you know, not John Doe, but your regular watch enthusiast even. So yeah, I think if I looked at the e-crown that Benoit has launched now with his Tour series, I think it makes a lot of sense. I actually, when I in the morning when I strap a watch to my wrist or I put a watch on my wrist, very often the watch came out of the safe, has not run for a couple of days. And how do I set it right? By looking at my atomic clock or my electronic clock. What Benoit is coming up with is the perfect solution. I take it out of the safe, I tap on the crystal, and it's back in fine shape. Is everybody going to think that that's fantastic? I don't know. I think it's I think in any way, I think there's it's a very practical one as well. Not only is it, you know, is it a fantastic innovation, it's also a very practical one. So yeah, me as a collector, I have no problems with that at all.
Benoit, Mintiens, you wanted to react shortly?
Well, no, I thank you for understanding what that we approach this, and but yes, it's true that it's difficult to explain even a tourbillon to someone that is not so much into watchmaking. But if you say, okay, look, double tap, one tap, now I go to London as a time zone, and the watch automatically goes to London time zone. It's like, oh, that's nice. That's really different. You don't need to explain a lot. Even my grandmother can understand that. So, and then you say, but it's not electric. It's a mechanical watch. So it's this, and look, it ticks. You hear it ticks. So it's so this. It's true that sometimes in the watchmaking industry, we search really deep. We go even to materials and molecules. And I remember Zenith with their thing that vibrated. I don't hear it a lot anymore now, but it was a very, very interesting development, I believe. But yes, how do you explain it to someone that is not so much in watchmaking? It's more difficult. I think maybe we make ourselves a bit too difficult sometimes. Maybe just change the color. That's easy, you know.
That for sure. William Massena, very quickly, your point of view on the question.
I don't think you should only change the color. I think there need to be people like you, Benoit, that thrive for real innovation. And we applaud you for this, both you and Antoine, where you make a very thin movement and components to make very thin watches. As long as you guys are around, I think we're going to be okay.
Okay. Well, maybe we have time for a very last comment.
Yes, maybe just link to what we said about the e-crown and also the relating to the Apple Watch on the wrist of your children. Isn't true innovation a way to attract younger generation? True innovation a great way to attract younger generation into watchmaking?
It's going to be a tricky one because you only have like 30 seconds to answer. So who wants to go? Who can make it short? Okay, go ahead, Ariel Adams.
Okay, thank you so much. So we see a lot of the historical watches being relevant to pursuits of the past, some racing and boating and maybe polo and things that people did in the past, and we still celebrate these watches today. What are young people doing? What are the activities they love? How do we build watches around those lifestyles? Watches meant to exist within those lifestyles. That's how to create the relevance. It's a traditional watch, but built for something that you do today. I think that's the answer, how to get younger people into watches.
Thank you very much for making it short and very consistent. Well, gentlemen, this is already the end of this panel discussion. I know we want to say a lot more, but the time is up, so that's where we have to close. I would like to thank you, Antoine Pin, Benoit Mintiens, William Massena, Patrick Tacq, and Ariel Adams for being with us today. I would like to thank you, gentlemen, Benjamin and Pascal, for sharing the questions of our audience. And I would like to thank you for being with us today for this fourth panel discussion on innovation. This is the last panel discussion for me today. So tomorrow I will hand over the set to Belle Donati. She will be talking about blockchain. So be sure to tune in at 12:15 p.m. Swiss time. I wish you a very good afternoon. And I say, take care of yourself.